Welcome to the introduction to Octoid. I'm Dave Nottage, independent software consultant specializing in Delphi and Embarcadero MVP. In this video, I'll be describing what Octoid is and how you might benefit from it, how to obtain Octoid, compiling the desktop application, and the basics of how to use it. Octoid is an acronym for Objective-C Translator into Delphi. It's a tool that translates Objective-C header files or .h files from iOS or macOS frameworks into Delphi code. Note that it just translates headers, it does not translate application code. iOS and macOS SDKs consist of a number of libraries called frameworks. A number of these have already been translated or imported, which you will find in the Delphi source. Under the RTL folder, there is an iOS and OS X or macOS folder, and in each folder are the existing imports. Here you can see, for example, an import for AV Foundation for iOS. Delphi uses these imports to implement various functionality for iOS and macOS. For example, in FMX Media AV Foundation, the TAV Video Capture Device class makes use of iOS classes such as AV Capture Device, which can be found in the iOS API AV Foundation import that I mentioned earlier. Now, although there are imports that have been done already, some can be out of date, and there are some frameworks that are yet to be imported that you might want to use. One example is the background task framework that was introduced in iOS 13. I won't go into the detail of what this framework is for. Later in the video, I'll just be using it as an example of a framework that is yet to be imported that you can import with Octoid. Octoid is open source and is available in a repository on GitHub. I recommend reading the README as it has important information about the requirements, such as installing LLVM. To obtain the source, either use your favorite Git client, which you can find information about Git clients in the video description, or download the zip file and unzip it to a suitable location. As per the README, currently you also need to install LLVM. This is because Octoid depends on libclang.dll, which LLVM installs, in order for it to work. LLVM also installs header files for the C library called clang, which Octoid can refer to if they are not present in the SDK files. Using Octoid to import some iOS and macOS frameworks requires these files. Installing LLVM is very straightforward. I won't go into it here, however, if you have trouble with that part, please leave a comment. Open up Delphi, and in this case, I'll be compiling the desktop app, so I'll load that. The latest version of Delphi is recommended, which is 11.3 at the time of this video. However, it will very likely compile in earlier versions, back to Delphi 10.3. Now it's just a case of compiling and running. I'll use run without debugging to launch Octoid. When Octoid is first run, an SDK needs to be selected. By default, SDKs are under the Documents Embarcadero Studio SDKs folder. For this example, I'll select the iOS 16.4 SDK. Now Octoid displays the frameworks that are in the SDK. Note how the framework mentioned earlier, background tasks, is not listed. It needs to be added in SDK Manager in Delphi. So in Delphi, open the SDK Manager and select the relevant iOS SDK. In this case, it is iOS 16.4. Scroll the list down to the Frameworks section, select an existing framework, then click the Add button in the top right. In the path on Remote Machine Combo, enter SDK root System Library Frameworks, and make sure that that is correct, and enter the framework name, in this case background tasks. Note that it is case sensitive, so please make sure it is exactly as per the documentation. Click OK, then click Update Local File Cache. This will transfer the frameworks files from the Mac. When the Already Exists message appears, click Yes to all. At this point in time, ignore the Cannot Create File message that appears. It's a known issue, however it won't affect anything. Also important, click Save once it is finished. Restart Octoid and the framework now appears in the list. Enter or select a folder to which the imports will be generated into. Select the framework and click Transform, and then within a couple of seconds, the framework has been imported into Delphi code. Let's see what it looks like in Delphi. First, check for any obvious errors. Octoid is very accurate, however there may be the odd scenario that it is yet to handle. So please feel free to file an issue in the repository if you encounter one. There are two problems with this import. One is that the identifier dispatch QT is unknown. The documentation says that this comes from the dispatch framework. In the imported Delphi units, the dispatch framework is common to iOS and macOS, so it's located in the RTL OSX folder. And there it is. This highlights a current shortcoming with Octoid, in that sometimes the users clause is missing required units. For now, the unit can just be added to the users clause. Okay, that problem's solved. Next, the identifier NS error domain is unknown. The documentation for NS error domain shows that it comes from the Foundation framework. As you can see, the interface users clause actually has the iOS API Foundation unit listed. So this likely means that either this type was never imported into that unit, or the unit is out of date and the type needs to be added. Looking again at the documentation, NS error domain is just a synonym for NS string. So to resolve this issue for now, a declaration for NS error domain can be added to this unit. That resolves the issues for this import. You'll find that other imports may require more attention, mostly because other imported units are yet to be updated. As to how to actually use this particular import, you'll need to consult the Apple documentation, or learn from examples which you could Google for, or consult with developers who are familiar with it. This concludes the intro to Octoid. Future videos will cover importing third-party frameworks, the options available in Octoid, resolving import errors, and more. Thanks for watching.